come to order. Please pause for a moment of silent meditation. Thank you. I will now call on Julian Jones, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman.
You're welcome.
This legislative session is convened for the purpose of considering a resolution at the request of the administration and a resolution sponsored by Councilman Crandall related to the state of emergency during the COVID-19 pandemic. Is there a motion to approve the journal for the meetings of May 4th, 2020 and May 12th, 2020?
So moved. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The journal is approved. We now have the enrollment of bills. Bills 20, Mr. Boswick, do you want to do the bills?
Yes, ma'am. Bills 2720, 2820, 2920, 3020, 4820, and 4920 were passed by the county council, signed by the executive, and are hereby enrolled.
Thank you. We will now consider all miscellaneous business. Mr. Secretary, first item.
Madam Chair, the first resolution to be called is Resolution 5220. This is a resolution to approve the continuation of the state of emergency under Executive Order number 2020-002. And I believe several people from the administration are here.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I, at this time, like to have a point of privilege to make a statement because there seems to be an understanding out in the county about how a resolution goes from the executive office to the county council. So I was elected 3 times to represent the citizens of the 6th district. I was also unanimously elected by my colleagues to serve as the chair of the county council for 2020. I have served as the chair of the county council more than any other woman in Baltimore County's history. Among other duties as chair, I led the council in its communications with the administration. As has been the tradition, and as a courtesy, the council chair introduces legislation at the request of the county executive and administration. This function allows the council members to consider proposals from the administration. Let me be clear. I will not bow to those who threaten my life for doing this job. I stepped forward almost 10 years ago because we needed someone that would represent a very diverse district and lead this county to its best days. When in this country, a legislative body becomes scared to do its job due to death or violent threats, we are in big trouble. People need to understand that I'm not now or never will be intimidated into an action I think is not in the best interest of Baltimore County and the 6th District. I appreciate my colleagues' vigorous and respectful debate on this and every subject, because I believe through the process we improve Baltimore County. That's the job I signed up for. That's the job I do, and that's the job I intend to continue doing regardless of threats. Thank you, everyone. Continue, Mr. Boswick.
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that the administration has several people that will speak to Resolution 52. I think Dr. Branch is first.
Dr. Branch, good morning.
Madam Chair, before we proceed. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Are we not proceeding in numerical order for the resolution?
I'm the chair, and this is the direction we're going in this morning. Dr. Branch, your comments, please.
The resolution 5020.
Branch, Chris.
Resolution 5120 is numerically ahead of resolution 5220.
Host, please mute Councilman Crandall. Dr. Branch, continue.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Branch, the Health Officer of Baltimore County. I have 5,025 reasons to be before you this morning. 5,025. Because that's how many COVID-19 cases we had in Baltimore County when I went to bed last night. And I woke up with 5,025 on my mind. So what does that look like? 5,005 people would fill the CQ Arena in Towson. That's a lot of people. But think about this number, 865. 805 Baltimore County cases were added in just this past week alone. 865 people would fill Sparrows Point High School or Lansdowne Middle School. Communities in Parkville and Owings Mills and Dundalk all have over 300 cases each. So what does 5,025 look like? Them are Hispanic. Over 1,400 of them are white. 1,800 are African American. And approximately 1,200 have not identified their racial background. 2,235 are men. 2,790 are women. 3,500 are between the ages of 18 and 64. 616 are in their 20s. And another 162 are under the age of 18. And that is more than 3 school buses full of children. And perhaps allows least amount, the number of 281. The fact is that 281 of these cases have ended in death, which just a couple of days ago, a 15-year-old girl just shy of her 16th birthday. And ladies and gentlemen, what is obvious by studying the numbers is the fact that there, but for the grace of God, any one of those persons could have been any of us. What's missing from numbers, what's missing from the charts, what's missing from the data is that each individual case is so much more than just that individual. Each individual case represents a neighborhood affected and impacted. Each individual case represents a home that was impacted. Each individual case represents plans interrupted, dreams deferred, careers stalled, and circled. And that is just looking at the confirmed cases that eventually recover. Now, think about the 281. 281 individuals have lost their lives to COVID-19. And from that perspective, from the lives lost, washing too troublesome, face coverings too annoying, is social distancing too inconvenient, and is sheltering in place really difficult. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand when I tell you that the COVID-19, it's real, it's here, and it's deadly. And as long as there's no treatment, no vaccine, and no cure, we need to use all the tools in our arsenal to combat this public health threat on all fronts. And these tools include PPE, testing, contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine. PPE stands for personal protective equipment, and it plays a major role in helping us to stop the transmission of this virus. Many communities have been hit hard by this pandemic, and we're working to address that by providing the COVID-19 safety kits to these communities. And these kits contain masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and educational information about the disease. Testing has always been important to help to contain the spread. However, until recently, testing was not available to everyone. And I'm proud to say that that is changing. In fact, I will leave this meeting to go over to the Timonium State Fairgrounds, where Baltimore County is broadening our testing criteria to include both symptomatic and asymptomatic individuals. We have also worked diligently to provide community-based testing across the county, and we're hosting testing sites in Randallstown, in Owings Mills, in Dundalk, and Timonium. Contact tracing. This is a process that gives us the ability to identify persons that may be infected before they become symptomatic. We contact them, we place them in isolation or in quarantine, and that's prior to them transmitting the disease. All that we're doing, we still need to remember, this is a marathon and not a sprint. But if we're going to win this race, we must stick to the course and remember our P's and Q's. Our P's, place 6 feet distance between you and others. That's our social distancing. Practice healthy personal hygiene. That's frequently washing your hands. And promote the use of face coverings whenever you're in public. And our Q's, question all of that fake news that you may get from social media. And quit venturing out unless it's absolutely necessary. My hope is that you will join me in sharing this information with your constituents, with your families, with your colleagues, and with your friends. I thank you, and God bless you.
Dr. Branch, thank you so much for adding clarity to what's happening in Baltimore County. I think there's a lot of confusion, so the more confusion that we can interpret today, the better off all the citizens of Baltimore County will be. And I'd like to thank you personally. I know how tired and exhausting all this must be for our health department, but we're certainly lucky to have you. And thank you so much for being with us this morning. Mr. Benjamin, did you have, well, first let me ask Councilman Quirk, did you have a specific question for Dr. Branch before we go on to something else, before we move on?
Well, I do have a question. Perhaps if there's anybody else that's going to be speaking from the County Executive Office, perhaps they go first, and then we can ask questions after that.
You want to hear?
This is Dr. Branch. I am being paged out to Timonium Fairgrounds. We've got hundreds and hundreds of people online for testing at this point now. So I was going to try to slip off the call so I can get over there, if that's okay.
Does anybody have a very quick question for Dr. Branch before he leaves this conversation?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman Jones.
I would just like to just take an opportunity to thank you, Dr. Branch, for your very eloquent and compassionate presentation. As always, you have a way of bringing us home in terms of focusing on what is important, which is the health of the citizens of Baltimore County. And I am reminded in your last presentation, you reminded us of all the other ills in Baltimore County that is not taking a break because the coronavirus is in town. So I just want to thank you for all you're doing, and Godspeed, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Branch. And it was just some pictures from Timonium Fairgrounds, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars there ready for people to be tested. Mr. Benjamin?
Madam Chair.
Did you have comments for us this morning? We're going to let the professionals and the folks from the administration talk first, Councilman Catch, and then we are saving our questions for afterwards. Mr. Benjamin?
I had a specific question for the doctor, but...
He's gone.
Oh, he is?
Dr. Branch? Oh, he's gone. No, he's gone. I'm sorry. Okay. He's gone.
Sorry.
He's gone. Mr. Benjamin.
Madam Chair, we can, whatever Councilmember excuse me, catches. Question is, I can follow up with Dr. Branch once he gets situated, but he needed to get out to the fairgrounds.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Mr. Benjamin, did you have anything to add on Resolution 2220? I'm sorry, 5220.
Just a couple of things, if I may, Madam Chair.
Uh-huh.
I'm here. I'm the county attorney seeking to approve continuation of the state of emergency declared by the county executive on March 13th, 2020. But there were a couple of points that I just wanted to present to the members to think about two things, really. One is important to keep in mind that while Governor Hogan has lifted the stay-at-home order, the state of emergency that was declared by Governor on March 5th of this year has not been lifted. I think that's an important point to make. And I also wanted to make clear there's a distinction between an essential business service and a fundamental right. I think it's important to remember that the governor made this distinction between essential and non-essential businesses based upon guidance from the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency on what business activities were critical or deemed critical to the infrastructure of the United States and by extension the state of Maryland. Guidance lists a number of activities that were deemed critical to the infrastructure, including public health, law enforcement and first responders, water and wastewater, public works, communication and information technology, critical manufacturing, different activities that were or are critical to the infrastructure. It's important to note that the guidance does not say that religion is critical to the infrastructure. Now, we all know that freedom of religion is a fundamental right, and people absolutely have a right to worship as they wish, but it's not essential because the federal government determined it wasn't critical to the infrastructure of the country. So as we go through this exercise, I think it's important to keep that distinction in mind and also remember again that the state of emergency issued by the governor still stands. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman Jones.
I just wanted to just add one thing, Mr. Benjamin. Isn't it true that the state of emergency is pretty much all across the United States? Every state right now today is under a state of emergency?
More or less, yes, sir.
Can I ask some questions, Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Mr. Benjamin, what is the constitutional and legal basis for a state of emergency? I mean, I keep hearing that it is unconstitutional. What is the basis for this?
Well, keep in mind that we have to be able to balance people's right to worship, right, freedom of religion with public health. And when we're looking, and I think that when you're looking at the state of emergency, the county code specifically allows for the county executive to be able to issue the state of emergency to be able to protect the public health. The code, section 3-1-503 of the code says, if there is a threat or occurrence of an emergency, the county executive may declare a state of emergency within the county. The information that was presented by Dr. Branch clearly shows that COVID-19 is an emergency. It is a threat to public health. It's potentially lethal. And so the county executive has the ability pursuant to the code to be able to issue the state of emergency. And it's consistent with what Governor Hogan has done as far as issuing the state of emergency. But I think it's important to note too that, as I said, looking at, and the concern is about, I guess, the prohibitions on large gatherings is actually related to the legitimate government interest in the spread of COVID-19. because the prohibition limits contacts between individuals, and that's how the virus spreads. And keep in mind, too, that the restrictions that have been levied are the same for secular institutions as they are for religious. 10 or fewer people would be able to go to stores. 10 or fewer would be able to go to have indoor or outdoor services at churches. And there's an unlimited number, by the way, of individuals who would want to go to church through a drive-in or drive-through service. It's also important to keep in mind that the restrictions in the executive order are neutral. That is, it prescribes conduct without regard to whether or not the conduct is religiously motivated. There's no indication the executive order, which, by the way, is different from the state of emergency we're talking about here, is meant to target conduct because of religious motivation. And also, too, the executive order is generally applicable too. Now, that the executive order is under-inclusive because it allows some businesses to accommodate large crowds, masses of people, such as at Lowe's, Walmart. I think we've all heard that. It's important to note that these activities aren't comparable to religious services. Lowe's, Walmart, they sell items that are necessary for everyday life, and they help to facilitate the mitigation of COVID-19. And unlike religious services, they can't operate remotely. So I think as we're looking at this, being able to see whether or not there's a constitutional basis for the state of emergency, whether there's a constitutional basis for the executive order, I think that the answer is both yes to both.
And you mentioned the difference between the state of emergency and the executive order. Can you clarify that? What is the difference? Because I think many people are getting these two confused.
The state of emergency, you have to have that first. There's a declaration that's been made that there's an emergency here in the county. And so because of the COVID-19, so the county executive declared a state of emergency pursuant to the emergency, or in accordance with the emergency declaration he issued back in March. The executive order we're talking about is part of what he has done because a state of emergency exists. You have to have the state of emergency first. That's been declared. And then as a result of that, during the local state of emergency, the county executive can issue executive orders that he considers necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of persons within Baltimore County. So that's, I think, is the difference. That's the distinction. That you have the state of emergency declared, and that as part of the state of emergency, he can then issue executive orders to help protect the health, safety, and welfare of persons within the county.
If you eliminate the state of emergency, what else are you eliminating besides the ability to do the executive orders?
Well, there's also the issue of funding, being able to, it could impact as far as being able to get assistance for, with funding to be able to help combat the COVID-19. Bear with me, if you will, for a moment. I'm going to pull this up.
It would also affect the county's ability to make procurements, correct?
It would.
To procure medical supplies.
That's right.
Okay.
And if I could,
For Mr. Benjamin, Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman Jones.
just a quick comment. I think while Mr. Benjamin takes a look at all the differences that go along with the state of emergency, it's important to note that if you were attempting to get rid of the state of emergency just because you are dissatisfied with the orders that the county executive, it would amount to basically saying there's a fly in my kitchen and I want to use a stick of dynamite to get rid of the fly. there's so many things that go with the state of emergency, including federal funding, the ability to stop people from being having their water turned off or foreclosures. There's all sorts of things that go with that, things that we would agree that are helpful and needed at this time. And to somehow try to get rid of the state of emergency because you're dissatisfied that you can't go to church or go to a restaurant, like I said, it amounts to using a stick of dynamite to kill a fly in your kitchen. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Catch?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start off by saying, first of all, that I'm disappointed that churches will still remain basically closed. I want to compliment the county executive on his order today to reopen retail under certain circumstances. I think that's a step in the right direction. Like so many issues that we confront, there is no clear path. In that, I mean, I can remember before I was elected to the state legislature, I'd read about a particular issue in the paper. I'd say, oh, I'm against that, or I'm for that. And then when you get into the legislature and you listen to the testimony and you find out that most issues aren't that clear cut. Every day I look at the numbers of deaths and cases in Maryland, and it's been pretty consistent that people 70 and over, around 68, well, it's 68% of them, of the deaths are within that age group. The other area that's a real problem are nursing homes and retirement communities, where the death rate is about 69%. And I spoke with the county executive some time ago, and we talked about the issue. Then he promulgated some executive orders which we're going to be helping nursing homes deal with the most vulnerable people in our population. He issued those regulations, I think, less than a week ago. And in fact, a couple of the nursing homes in my district have called. The county has sent out a team, and the facility feels much safer that they're going to be able to contain the individuals who do have COVID, and then we're going to keep this COVID rate low. Dr. Benjamin, with what the county executive did he need this ability because of the state of emergency that we called and the fact that we gave him these executive powers? Would he have been able to do what he did regarding nursing homes without these powers?
I don't think so. I think that by being able to have this emergency in place, that this was able to help the county be able to facilitate these things. And just so I'm clear, when you have the declaration of the state of emergency by a locality like Baltimore County, it allows us to be able to, again, request these additional resources from the state and federal governments to be able to assist in response to recovery efforts. So we share the responsibility in protecting citizens from disasters and be able to help them recover when they strike. So being able to have a state of emergency in place allows us to be able to do these things or help the county executive be able to do these things with regard to the nursing homes, be able to protect the citizens. I know that this is a difficult thing, as you said, for all of us, but it's just trying to protect the health welfare of the county and its citizens, and the emergency declaration allows that.
When I think of
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Rogers?
May I be acknowledged to speak, please?
Yes, Ms. Rogers, certainly.
I'm not,
Good morning, Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Katz. I just wanted to reiterate one point that Attorney Benjamin indicated. The declaration is tied to some of our resources, and I need to be clear on that. You know, you have the federal level of this, you have the state, and then you have the local level. If we did not have our declaration in place, first of all, we'd be the only jurisdiction in Maryland without a declaration. And our declaration is tied back to access to certain resources. And our issue is we need every dollar that we can bring in to help combat COVID. So my concern is, particularly as we look at the long term meaning the testing that we will need to do, the contact tracing that we will need to do, the contact tracers that we will need to hire, that's going to cost significant dollars. We've done the cost analysis. Dr. Branch and I spent the several weekends poring over how much it was going to cost. So for us to, you know, not have the ability to get any and every resource possible to help the citizens of our county is not in the best interest of our county.
do you have any idea how much money we have?
Madam Chair.
Councilman Burke, you had a question for Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilman Quirk, I'm not done yet.
All right. After Councilman Katz, I definitely have a very important question for Ms. Rogers.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms.
Councilman,
Rogers,
go ahead.
do you have any idea how much money that we have secured from the state and federal government during this state of emergency?
Councilmember Katz, we can give you that total, but our largest pool of resources is $144 million from the CARES Act. But from the standpoint, there are other smaller pots of money. We received some state funding to help, especially on the HHS side. But we're happy to give you, look at that from a financial standpoint and let you know. But we definitely have a lot more that we need to invest, especially around the testing and the contact tracing and the case management follow-up that we will need to do.
And I just want to say that as a Republican, I think we're far better off the more localized that we can address this COVID epidemic. For instance, I don't know what the governor would have done or might have done or could have done in regard to the problem we're having with nursing homes. Would he have reacted as quickly as our county executive did? Would he have even known about our particular problem in Baltimore County? So I'm, with everything, there's the good side, the bad side. And the question is, if we were to repeal these powers, where would it leave us? So I'm very concerned, and unfortunately, no decision that an elected person makes is clear-cut. And this is one of these that is not clear-cut. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I think one thing that's really, really important that the county needs to make sure that people understand, like super important, that this is not Baltimore County or the county executive choosing more money for government coffers over independent small business people or communities. I mean, I want to make sure we're absolutely clear about that. I think it's really important that people understand that if we continue the state of emergency, that doesn't mean that we're keeping things from reopening. As a matter of fact, just today, the county executive did release new information and heading into phase 1, helping retail stores and hair cutting, and it's not 100% full loaf yet, but by the way, neither is the state. The state, for example, still has jurisdiction over daycare centers. The state still has jurisdiction over what's going to happen with our schools. And so, I learn a lot sometimes from Facebook, and I think Sometimes. But I think that we want to make sure that the perception is not out there that somehow we're holding off and we're keeping a state of emergency to get federal funds. So I think question to Ms. Rogers and perhaps to Drew or others is, can you be very clear about what other powers, what are the things that the state of emergency allows for that we couldn't have if we removed the state of emergency? So if we could talk a little more about that as well. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman Jones.
I just want to make one comment in reference to what you said, Councilman Quirk. And I think this is so important that we get this fact straight, right? So the way Baltimore County works, if we got rid of the state of emergency, we would be operating under our normal operations, our normal MO. What that means is the county cannot spend $25,000 without the county council approving it, nor could the county accept a gift or a grant from the federal government or state or anybody else without us approving it. Now, imagine going to battle and you're the general and you can't even so much as do anything without the approval of some committee someplace else. That is not where we need to be at this time. A good example, the county executive, while everybody in the country was scrambling, trying to get their hands on PPE, we were able to assemble a group of vendors, and we spent a total of $3 million on N95 masks and other personal protective equipment. We would have lost that opportunity had you made a deal, you found a vendor, you can make it happen, but wait a minute, I can't spend the money because I have to go back and convene the county council to have them approve it. That's one of the important things of this state of emergency, which is it gives the county executive the authority to make these purchases, do what's necessary, and report back to us at a later date within a certain specific time frame, but he is not prohibited from making those things at that particular time. So I think that's important. When we think about all the money we're getting and all the other things, just remember, we can't accept $25,000, nor could we spend $25,000 if we did not have the state of emergency without the approval of the county council.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Crandall.
first let me say how disappointed I am and how unconscionable it is that I would be muted for asking a question. But I'm going to move on.
Let me interrupt. That's not what happened, sir. What happened, just so
You directed,
just
I'm
so
sorry,
followers
you directed our administrator to mute me.
because I was having a conversation with Dr. Branch, and I was not going to let you continue to interrupt. You wanted to interrupt because you wanted to know why your resolution wasn't first. And
Still was not answered.
And I'm not going to, and I will explain that. I'm the chair of the county council, and the agenda is mine. Okay, I put in
All right.
order.
Well, my agenda is
you were
the
muted,
people's
sir.
agenda. So I'm going to move
Why
on.
you muted?
I'm going to move on with what I would like to say.
Sure, I won't interrupt you.
So, Councilman Jones, and I'll direct this to the attorneys that are present. When we declared the state of emergency, we basically voted to suspend the constitutional rights of our citizens, and they went along with it, and now they're no longer willing to do so. There is nothing that I have seen in legislation that prohibits Baltimore County from accepting federal and state aid without a declared state of emergency. What the state and our own attorneys have advised us that there is no legal basis for that. What the state of emergency declaration does is give us a marketing piece to seek this aid. So I'm going to fall on the side of the Constitution of the United States and stand up for that, because I took an oath to do so, as did all of us. I will not stand aside because my oath did not say anything about protecting Baltimore County or marketing Baltimore County for resources from the federal and state. It said to support the Constitution of the United States. Now, with respect to the monies that come in through various sources, private donations or public dollars, and let's be fair about it and let's be honest about it, these are all public dollars no matter where they're coming from, whether they're federal or state. We passed a resolution, or in fact, I think it was a bill. We passed legislation that allows the county executive and the administration to accept grants from various sources without coming before the council to do so. That was an emergency measure that we legislated. That had nothing to do with a declared state of emergency. What a declared state of emergency by a political subdivision in Baltimore County, according to the Baltimore County Code, gives the county executive the powers to do exactly what he has done, which is to restrict small businesses and houses of worship. His announcement this morning, I think, should be welcomed. It is a step in the right direction. The people that have advocated for a change in the policy should be congratulated for their efforts. Thousands of people have come out to voice their opinion on this, and their opinion obviously was heard because the county executive came out an hour before our meeting to amend what he announced last week. However, churches are still restricted. Small businesses face restrictions that large businesses do not. There is an inherent unfairness in all of these policies. And again, I'll go back to the county code. The legislative power the administrative power under the county code gives the county executive 11 different things that he may do, including regulating firearm sales, regulating the sale of alcohol, shutting down places of assembly, including houses of worship. So, and I have yet to find, and I'm willing to be wrong on this, but I have yet to find where a political subdivision declaring a local state of emergency prohibits us from receiving funding. I have yet to find that. And in fact, the state code calls for these funds to be distributed at the governor's discretion. So there is no prohibition that I can find or that I've been told by our attorneys that would prohibit the county from seeking that aid from the governor or the federal government. And most of these federal dollars, as we're aware, they siphon through or are siphoned through and distributed by the state. So what this argument to me is about, and I disagree with Councilman Katch, I think it's pretty cut and dry. The First Amendment is being restricted, and people were willing to do that when this pandemic first started. Now I'll go back to what Dr. Branch had said. I don't disagree with anything that Dr. Branch said. I am not diminishing this as a public health crisis. However, the numbers are what the numbers are. 200 and at my last check, and I'll bring back the website up on my other laptop here. $261 confirmed deaths in Baltimore County. And I agree with all of you that one death is too many. But we're not looking at what are the deaths. We did not declare a state of emergency with the opioid crisis. How many overdose deaths have we gotten? How many of those deaths are due to underlying health causes? 204 of those 261, 204 deaths in Baltimore County. As sad as they are, and I feel for those families, 204 of those 261 deaths in Baltimore County were people, unfortunately, in congregated care, and that is where our focus should be. The data shows us, the data is there, the data shows us, as other states have opened up, that exponential jumps in positive cases have not occurred. We have also seen in Baltimore County increases in the number of positive cases. That can be attributed to the testing that we are doing that was paid for, and I'll quantify one number that Councilman Katch asked for. $144 million in change has already been given to Baltimore County and put in our bank account. So again, I will go back to the constitutional argument that freedom of assembly, freedom to worship as you please, is being violated and will continue to be violated until we get rid of this state of emergency, revert back to the full course of what the governor has said. I'm obviously a no on the extension. And again, I want to congratulate the people that have made their voices heard, but we only got a partial victory today for constitutional rights with the county executive's announcement, which curiously was 1 hour. He had days to make it, and curiously came 1 hour before we were convening today to discuss the extension of his powers. So I'm not going to stand aside and let a county executive play games with people's freedoms and play political games with people's livelihoods, which is what is happening now. So I've made my statement, and I know that Ms. Rogers has her hand up. She might dispute some of what I've said. Inside of all of my statement today, there are questions inherent in that statement. But we need to get back to fairness. We need to get back to fairness. Is Walmart being restricted to 10 people in a store plus staff? I don't think that they are under what the county executive said today. So there's fair and there's unfair. And Councilman Katz, that is cut and dry. So I've made my statement. I will yield the floor back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Crandall. And I would just like to take 45 seconds just to have clarity. So we don't have to keep discussing this. I wasn't muting you so you couldn't speak. I was muting you so Dr. Branch could speak. He told me the administration needed to speak first because he had to get out to Timonium Fairgrounds. So I wanted him to get his statement out and to be able to take all questions. It is my right as the chair to decide the agenda of the work session and the council meetings, and I will do so. I'm reading a lot of chat, and again, I don't think that we should be bullied about this. There is no reason to be disrespectful. There is no reason to make threats. Yes, I said bullied, and so everybody, if you have real questions and answers that you want the administration or the council members to answer after this meeting through their offices or for social media, we're happy to do that. But please know that, a lot of what you just said, Mr. Crandall, County Executive Johnny Olszewski didn't close the churches down. Governor Larry Hogan did. Governor Larry Hogan put all this in place, and we are moving forward into phase 1 now, which is more than any other of the other jurisdictions, the smaller jurisdictions. So we are moving forward. So I'm only asking that people stop the bullying and then just be best people. Okay, who wants to be next? Ms. Rogers, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of points, and I'll try to address some of the things as the chat's coming in. Councilmember Crandall, I'm not going to go line by line or refute what you're saying. Your opinion is your opinion, and we respect all opinions when we're in a public setting trying to do what's best for the county. So I'll say that in general. But there's a couple things I do want to address. You are liking the COVID-19 issue or compare COVID-19 issue and opioid deaths. I will say that Dr. Branch has continued to articulate the concern, and just because we are laser focused on COVID, we are still focused on every other thing in the county from a public health standpoint. The difference between opiate deaths and COVID, opiate deaths are not communicable. They are the result of an action of a person, unfortunately, taking something that impacts them. COVID-19 is a situation where people, unbeknownst to one another, infect each other. So I just need to say that because I'm looking at all that we have to do amidst this COVID crisis that will be with us for some time, as Dr. Branch indicated. So I'm going to just want to leave that part there. We are trying to remain focused, and we still look at the opiate death numbers each and every day when we give our report out. The second thing, in terms of moving forward and trying to do this using data, we have data elements that we are looking at each day that help us determine how much more we open up with respect to the governor's plan. The governor devolved the decision-making to the counties, and the counties are doing this based on the data that they're looking at for their particular counties. I will say the decision of moving further toward opening up small business, it's been in the discussion for days. The county executive chose to give it today in his time frame because he looks at this daily. He is not just doing this, and there's no game playing. I really take exception with that, knowing the kind of deliberateness about the data and using what we have before us to make logical decisions about what's happening here in Baltimore County. And as someone earlier said, the counties are doing this now based on their own situations. I will say to you, the counties that moved forward and fully implemented the governor's phase 1 provisions, Hartford and Carroll, they did not drop their emergency declarations. Their declarations are still in place. They're just moving out in the phases. Last, I will say, outside dining absolutely is being considered. We're looking at the logistics on it and how we can do that. We have put on the street RFPs for small business loans, emergency loans up to $10 million of the monies that have come to us. So we are trying to make well thought out decisions based on data, not fingers in the air like, oh, we should do this or we should do that. I respectfully say we're trying to look out for the best interests of Baltimore County 100% and not game playing. That is not an accurate statement of how things are being done from the administrative side.
Ms. Rogers,
Sure.
Can I be allowed one more statement? Back to Councilmember Quirk's request. It is indeed the case that we are moving forward and opening up, looking at how we can open up and move further toward the provisions that the governor had in phase 1. But it would not be in our best interest to not do that using sound data. And Councilmember Quirk, you've asked us a lot of questions about data. Our data and the metrics that we are using in terms of opening up are available and public as to how we're making decisions, just like the governor has their data.
Ms. Rogers.
Madam Chair. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Rogers, thank you. Ms. Rogers, thank you. And you said a lot, and I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to address one thing that you said, going back to, I guess, the debate that is happening. I was not comparing opioids with COVID from a scientific or medical standpoint. From a legal standpoint, however, the county has received money from the federal government and the state government. I voted, and so did all the other council members, on accepting these funds. We did not accept those funds because we had a declared state of emergency. We accepted those funds because it was the right thing to do to address yet another public health crisis. And nothing that I'm saying is to try to diminish the seriousness of the coronavirus and its impact on our society. However, I firmly believe that we have choices as Americans. We have choices that we are allowed to make, suspended those choices, and now 2 months, almost 2 months into that suspension of constitutional rights, we are now going to try to extend those constitutional rights further and have government be everyone's parent. That is not what the people want. That is not what a citizen of the United States wants, and that is not what the Constitution says. So thank you again for your comments.
Heard, Madam Chair.
I do appreciate them.
Yes, Councilman Quirk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I really do think there's a lot of confusion out there in regard to this state of emergency. So I guess if Councilman Crandall's correct, then all 50 states that are currently under state of emergency don't understand the Constitution, which includes Republicans and it includes Democrats. The state of emergency, if we just suddenly in Baltimore County just stop the state of emergency, you know, we're not going out and fully reopening. We couldn't anyway under the state of Maryland guidance from Governor Larry Hogan. In addition, Baltimore County, as of today, is entering into phase 1. It's not completely phase 1, but it is much farther along than Montgomery County or Prince George's County or Baltimore City or any of the other populated counties. But I do kind of, Councilman Crandall, I do honestly resent your insinuation that somehow you know the Constitution better than any governor in the state of Maryland. You know the Constitution better than anybody else, including James Benjamin. This is not about the Constitution, Councilman Crandall. This is about balancing the health and safety of the citizens, but also make sure we're trying to reopen as fast as we can and as responsible as we can, because nobody on the county council wants to see small business go under. Nobody on the county council wants to see businesses fail. We all want to see success, and we want to do it in a reasonable way. So for you to pretend somehow you're some major constitutional scholar is a little bit repulsive. Thanks.
Well, Councilman Quirk, you can be as repulsed as you want, but I learned how to read a long time ago, and I've read the document. I do not even pretend to be a constitutional scholar, but I know what it says. With respect to another point that you made, there is no business, small business has been affected by this, whether it's currently legally operating or not, that wants to fully reopen without the safeguards and protocols. I have talked to numerous pastors throughout Baltimore County. They're willing to open their churches with certain protocols above and beyond what the advisory guidance of what the governor said. So I agree that the county executive made a step in the right direction, but it is not what the governor has said under phase 1. So I'm not saying that I'm trying to supersede the governor or I'm smarter than anyone else. I just know that people are willing to behave responsibly. They've proven that, which is why hospitalizations are flattened and why we're not seeing an exponential jump in the numbers. So I would just say again, you can be repulsed, but maybe it's time for you to go back and actually read the document, specifically the First Amendment.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
That's funny.
I'd like to say something quickly. I don't think everyone has learned the lesson, because you can pull into any Walmart, Target, Lowe's, Home Depot, any of the big boxes, anything that's open, and people are in there by the droves. And they're not social distancing. Their masks are down under their nose because, you know, they're hot, I guess. So, you know, their mouth is covered, their nose is not covered. And that includes employees, you know, and people are out there because they're the only things open, and people are shopping and they're not being responsible. We all know that. And Councilman Crandall, I agree. I have spoken with many small businesses, not just in my district, but in your district, had countless conversations with Reopen Baltimore County. I know that I won't mention businesses by name, but I know that so many businesses have taken, that are allowed to be open, that are essential, have taken so many precautions that they above and beyond just to be in business and to help that trickle-down effect for the other people that are trying to stay in business with parks and labor and trying to keep people working. You know, there's construction going on all over the place that people are trying to keep people working. I want people to understand, if you're listening and you listen to this later, we as a body, the 7 members of this county council, whether you're Republican or Democrat, we are all affected by this. We are just like you. The same rules are applying to us. I have children, I have grandchildren. My grandson graduates today in St. Mary's County, and I will be there. It will be a one-on-one graduation. That's a sad day for me and the family. We're so happy that he's graduating and going on to something bigger and better, but it's not what I had, and it's not what you had when you graduated. Okay, so we are all feeling this effect, whether we're not seeing our grandchildren, our children, we can't go out and do what we want and socialize. And yes, we are being paid, and we are being paid. I just saw a comment on there. Yes, we are being paid. Maybe you would like, maybe this person would like government shut down if you don't want to see us get paid. I mean, government, we have not skipped a beat in government. We are holding our work sessions virtually. We're holding our council meetings virtually, our budget meetings. We have done everything virtually. We're about to enter the CZMP process. We are moving ahead. I think that we should be slow and cautious. I understand that people don't have food. Baltimore County is feeding people 6 days a week. They're feeding at the schools every day, and then on Saturday, we are giving out thousands of meals, no questions asked. People that have never been in a food line in their lives are in food lines. I get it. My family gets it. Okay? My husband now has 3 positives where he works. I'm terrified for him to go to work. Okay? None of us are exempt from any of this. I feel everybody's pain. But Todd, I want to mention one thing to you, just one thing. When you talk about churches, you know that there are many, many churches that are online, worshiping on Wednesdays, worshiping on Sundays, whether you're a Catholic church, a Pentecostal church, a Methodist church, they're online, they're doing virtual masses, Bible school studies. Everyone is doing that online, and we all know in the Bible it says where 2 or more are gathered in my name. So you don't have to be underneath a roof to do that. But I tell you, I took notice of something. I won't mention your church, but I know the church that you attend. Have you looked on their website lately?
A few days ago, yes.
Their website wants your parishioners, your members of your church, to sign a waiver to enter that establishment. So what does that say?
Well, and I will tell you that the church that you were speaking of has more protocols than any business that I've seen in terms of protecting the members who, by their own choice and free will,
Right?
want to attend service.
I get that.
So,
Why is your
Now,
church?
let me also say,
there.
because no pastor that I'm aware of is diminishing the seriousness of this disease. But they also, and many of them take umbrage to the fact that they're being accused, either directly or subtly, being accused of not caring for their own members.
Well, I haven't heard that, and that's very sad. And
I've heard it, and I think after today you might hear it specifically. So, and let me also address something that you said, and I agree that there is not. Let me just address something that you said, Chairwoman. That I agree that there are some individuals who are not practicing what the guidance that the state and the county has said. I agree with you, but I would argue that small businesses have greater ability to protect their own customers and their employees more so than the big box stores that have been allowed to stay open from the very beginning. So I just again, I've yet to talk to a business owner that is not interested in protecting their customers. And Kathy, you said that you had the same conversations, probably with some of the same people that I have.
Absolutely.
So I feel like I've made my statement, and so I'm going to yield back to any other council member and Ms. Rogers raising her hand, so is Mr. King.
Well, and I want to say thank you for that. And I agree with you, but I'm not the governor, and it was Governor Larry Hogan that closed the churches, okay? The county executive didn't close the churches. Governor Larry Hogan closed the churches. And I want you to think about something, because somebody brought this up to me the other day, and I never really thought about it. Even when you separate people in a place of worship, or any let's just say any large group, okay, but especially church, there is singing and there is speaking out loud, and those droplets, that is when It is so dangerous, and when you are so at risk. So just singing a hymn in a place of worship puts you more at risk than having a conversation with somebody 10 feet away. And, that's unfortunate, and I'm guessing that's one of the reasons, why they're so fearful. Councilman Cash, I can't take you waving anymore. Go ahead.
Good. I just want to set the record straight. If I were the county executive, the businesses would be open today, the churches would be open today, and there'd be recreation and parks. The citizens of the county would be using them, of course, with safety precautions in place. I was implied that, I don't, but I do support all that. Our governor, his regulations are for the entire state of Maryland. We have where we have a state of emergency. We've given our county executive this power. The good part about that is that he can look just at at Baltimore County and make decisions that are appropriate for our county. It might be something that the governor has promulgated that doesn't really suit our county. So that's a concern I have. As far as the county executive goes, about 10 days ago, after Councilman Crandall talked to me about the issue of churches, I sent the county executive a letter where I asked him to reconsider his view and on churches. I also gave him some safety measures. Should he decide that in the churches, that would be reasonable and helpful. Yesterday, Councilman Marks and I spent time, we were with the county executive maybe 40 minutes trying to talk these issues about retail and churches back and forth. This morning's announcement was not done at that time. It has nothing to do with this meeting today. These conversations on reopening have been going on for some time prior to this morning's meeting. I can assure you of that because I've talked to the county executive twice about it. And as I say, Councilman Mark yesterday as well. So I'm happy that the retails are going to be open. I'm not happy that the churches aren't going to be open because I think that we're at that point where they should be. And I'm not happy that Rec and Parks isn't available. So I just wanted everyone to know that.
Councilman Cash, I've been hearing from folks in Rec and Parks as well, and who would like to see our children out and getting exercise, and I would love to see that too, but I just don't know how that's manageable in sports to keep children 10 feet apart in a lot of the sports. So that's not for me to determine. And I just wanted to add that. But of course, we would love to see our children out and participating in sports, but I'm not willing to do it at the risk of them getting sick. Councilman Jones, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, Madam Chair. I guess I had a couple of comments I wanted to make. First of all, I'm really, really sorry that you and other members of the council have been receiving these threats and bullying from basically ignorant people. I'm going to say that, we can debate issues responsibly and give people the respect that they are due and not resort to threats. And, this job is hard enough and you shouldn't have to deal with that. So I'm really, really sorry you are. Let me also say one more thing that I think this is something else a lot of people don't think about. When we look at the number of cases as well as the number of fatalities, most of ours are in nursing homes. So some people come to the conclusion that that is because they are weak and vulnerable. But let us not forget, it is also because they cannot social distance. They it is very difficult for people in nursing homes, prisons, these places to social distance. So the virus runs rampant and it seeks out the people that have the conditions that is such that they end up succumbing to the virus and dying. Now, the point I'm trying to make is don't just focus on nursing homes and think that these people are weak and old, but also recognize the fact that they cannot social distance. So if you know, and let us not forget also that this conversation is about the emergency powers of the county executive. But if for whatever reason the society were to open up and you did not have social distancing, there are a lot of other people in our community that will be exposed to the virus and they will also succumb to it and die. So, and I'm gonna say it one more time, in the nursing homes and the prisons and places like that, it's not just that they're old and vulnerable, it's because they cannot social distance. And social distancing is one of the main weapons we have against this virus at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I believe that we have the Director of Rec and Parks online. Rosalind, are you with us?
Yes, Council President, I'm here. Good morning.
Thank you. Can you please briefly speak to why at this point we are not ready to have any kind of rec and park activities currently?
Yes, currently we do have rec and park activities. The parks have remained open through this entire time. A father can go out with his child or a group of people who live in the same house. Groups less than 10 can go out and throw a baseball, play catch, and do all sorts of activities. They can go hiking, they can go biking, they can go walking, they can read a book in the park. There are many things that they can do in a park. However, we get it's not traditionally what some of us may do in a park. At this time, it is not safe. Myself, my team, we have been on calls with all state directors in the state of Maryland. We've been on calls with national directors. We've coordinated with the National Recreation and Parks Association. We've coordinated with the Center for Disease Control. There's a webinar on this Friday about youth sports that we will be on. We've looked at the National Federation of High School Associations. They've sent out guidelines for sports and how to play school sports. And we're also dependent on access to schools. And currently the schools are not open and they're not accessible. So we are constantly evaluating our ability to be able to play sports. We're looking at modifications that can be made. Right now we are in phase 1 as far as recreation and parks is concerned, and we have looked at all things that are allowable. Right now, golf is allowable. Also, tennis is allowable. We don't encourage people to play doubles with tennis. We encourage them to play singles, but we are looking at this. We are Parks and Recreation. This is our profession. This is what we love to do. As soon as we can safely get our youth out onto the fields to be able to play sports, we're all for it. But the key is safely get them out on the fields in order to be able to play sports.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Ms. Rogers, you had your hand up. Ms. Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple little things that I would say in addition to stress the fact that, number one, yes, the governor relaxed some things, and what we're here to talk about today is our declaration of emergency, but the state's declaration is still in place. Secondly, we will just continue to stress, if Dr. Branch was here, he would say this, that for vulnerable populations, that they should not participate, that they should stay at home as much as possible, because that is the case of where the numbers of infections and deaths, you know, we have the highest percentage. The other thing that's impacting our discussions in terms of youth sports is the new strain of COVID that is impacting children. We had, unfortunately, the first death of a 16-year-old from the strain of COVID. You know, it's mutating, that it is impacting children. So from a public health perspective, and that's why this is a health crisis, whether we want to call it that or not, it's about people, everybody, that everybody's potentially impacted. And we're trying to make thoughtful, deliberate decisions. I will go back and reiterate, we are in discussions with how we can open up seating, outdoor seating for restaurants. We put the money on the $10 million of the funds out for small businesses, and those grants are still available for anyone who has not applied yet. Go to our website and apply. So, we're doing everything that we can as a government to respond. The last thing I'll say with respect to potential impact and exposure, Dr. Branch has reiterated with us that now it's a situation of asymptomatic people who do not exhibit signs of COVID infection or have any kind of symptoms, that this crisis and this disease is transmitted through people who don't even have symptoms. So that's why we're trying to be careful and cautious. And yes, our numbers are looking better than they did, say, 2 weeks ago. And that's why the county executive is moving further and further toward opening based on what the governor said. But the governor said to the county executives, I'm leaving the discretion to you based on what's going on in your individual counties.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Councilman Marks?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have received over 1,000 emails in support of reopening Baltimore County. And almost all of them have this statement, and I'd like Ms. Rogers or Mr. Benjamin, whoever, to respond to this. Do not extend the shutdown for another 45 days to July. Respond to that statement. I mean, is that what we're doing?
No, that's not what we're doing. As you can see, we are not totally shut down where we were 2 weeks ago. We are gradually moving through phase 1 of the governor's phase 1 plan. So the 45-day extension, we're not where we were 2 weeks ago. I'm sure we won't be where we are today 2 weeks from now. So it's not that we're saying that this is a blanket statement of shutdown. It just will allow us to continue to do the things we're doing to get back to a degree of opening the government, the community in a responsible way using data.
I guess my question is this: why does it have to be 45 days?
I will defer to Mr. Benjamin on that one.
Okay.
Mr. Benjamin?
Well, the executive order allows for an additional 45 days, but the order also, depending on, let me pull it up, depending on how things go, the county executive would have the discretion, if they change, to be able to shorten that. He has that discretion under the executive order. He has the right to be able to have it last for 45 days, but if it's something where the state of emergency looks like it's going to let up, he would be able to shorten that based upon what the governor would say. So it's allowing for 45 days, and I think that's also about what the next time the county meets to be able to take up the issue. Right.
The council can meet at any time thanks to this technology. I mean, what I am hearing from people is that July date is what's triggering a lot of the frustration here. Why can't we do 2 weeks? And why that 45 days?
Madam Chair, can I respond to Councilman?
But I do want to say some additional things.
No, Councilman Marks, let me just say, I thought, to be quite frank, I thought one of your questions were not answered accurately or to a certain degree of certainty. And I think to answer your question earlier, it's important to separate. We said this before a couple of times today, but it is important to separate the state of emergency from any other order as it relates to whether we open businesses, close businesses, whether the governor gives that authority or not. it's important to separate that this state of emergency has to deal with so many other things. And I know that Councilman Crandall, you and I can debate some of these issues, but there are things that go along with the state of emergency that we should not be messing with, because that is very important to our citizens. And whether we, and not to say that the debate is not important to people, but the state of emergency allows for an awful lot of things in terms of services we're providing to the citizens and the flexibility that the county executive can have to be nimble at this time.
I understand that, Councilman Jones, but we are all on technology. We can convene very quickly. I don't know why we have to extend this for 45 days. That is part of the frustration, is people are seeing that July date. I don't know why we can't do this for 2 weeks. It would also force, greater consultation between the executive and legislative branches. I don't know why we have to go 45 days.
Well, I guess the point, not to get into too deep, but I guess the point is, why not go for 45 days if we know that all of these things are still going on? This crisis is not going to be over in 2 weeks. And it has nothing to do, and to people's point, you and I and the people that are paying attention, we know the difference between the stay-at-home order, which has never been done in Baltimore County, by the way, that's the state, and having 10 people per business. These things are separate from the state of emergency that we declared. So for people that don't understand that, I don't think we should somehow change just because they got it wrong. They need to get it right.
We get 1,000 emails saying, loosen the restrictions, and we don't like the 45-day extension. The county executive made a good start today, and I completely agree with him moving toward Governor Hogan's approach. But it's that 45-day time frame that people are frustrated by. I mean, why can't we do this in another 2 weeks? Why is the 45-day number so magical?
Well, the issue is we can do it for 45 days or 50 days. The same powers that we have to issue the state of emergency, we could take them away. So in 2 weeks, if we wanted to come back and take them away, we could. So why should it be that we push it out one time after another when we can just push it out there? If the time comes that we want to take it away, we could. But remember, it's like killing a fly in your kitchen with a stick of dynamite. There's so many other things around that's more important or just as important that we not get so caught up in focus.
Councilman Jones, again, where in the statutes, fed, state, or local, where in the statutes does it prohibit Baltimore County by not having a state of emergency? Where in the statutes does it say that we can't accept funds and that we can't do these programs? I challenge you to show me. Please show me. And I'll admit, when I see it, I'll admit that I was wrong.
I mean, I guess if I can just jump in again, we are all trying to find a middle ground. And I understand, the need to balance public health with businesses. I respect Councilman Crandall's bringing up the First Amendment. The preamble to the Constitution says we have the right, we have the responsibility to promote the general welfare. At least the federal government does. We're trying to balance a lot of things. I don't know why we can't make this go only for 2 weeks instead of 45 days and then revisit things.
Because I don't think much is going to change in a couple of weeks.
Correct. Okay.
It's not going to be a cure for at least probably till January or something.
Extending it for 2 weeks would be a demonstration, I think, that we are trying to balance a lot of priorities. It still gives the county executive the flexibility to purchase medical supplies, to do all these things he needs to do, but it would say, we're going to come back in 2 weeks and look at this again. It's a middle ground.
Okay.
Councilman Marks, I disagree with you. I respect the fact that you are seeking compromise. However, the people that we represent have already compromised enough. And nothing will, and Councilman Jones is right, nothing will change in 2 weeks. And honestly, not much is going to change in 45 days because this, as Ms. Rogers says, is a communicable disease. It's not going away in 45 days. If you listen to health experts, this will be with us. This is about a fundamental other issue. So I just, as a point of order, I think we move to vote.
No,
Well,
Madam Chair.
an amendment. We actually have an amendment. Mr. Secretary, can you read the amendment?
Madam Chair, I don't know if Mr. Benjamin had something he wanted to.
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Benjamin, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to address briefly Councilman Crandall's issue with regard to the constitutional piece. It's something I had said earlier during my remarks. We all agree that freedom of religion is a fundamental right. However, it's important to know that as a matter of constitutional law, the right has certain limitations and under the First Amendment are not absolute. Yesterday, the district court, the federal district court, came out with a decision that basically upheld Governor Hogan's stay-at-home orders. Now, I know we're talking about the county state of emergency declaration here, but I think that what was said in the opinion yesterday from Judge Blake is instructive. She has said that to overturn the governor's orders, those who disagree with them must show that they have no real or substantial relation to the public health. I think we all can agree that the prohibitions that are in the executive order are rationally related to a legitimate government interest of reducing the spread of COVID-19. I just wanted to make sure that it is clear that we all agree that there is a right, a fundamental right to religion, fundamental right to worship, but we must understand that it's not absolute, and that when you have an attempt to restrict free assembly or free worship, it must be justified by clear and present danger. And based upon the information that Dr. Branch has communicated to us, we have that here with regard to the COVID-19. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood, that the right wasn't absolute. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Mr. Bostwick?
Yes, ma'am. So the resolution that is before you, 5220, would, as has been discussed, extend the state of emergency declared by the county executive for 45 days from May the 25th, 2020, or until the executive declares an end to the state of emergency could occur first. The First Amendment that you have before you is, I believe, offered by Councilman Catch, and the amendment would replace that language that I just read with language that would allow the state of emergency to continue from May 25th, 2020 until May the 29th, 2020, which is next Friday, or unless the county executive declared the end of the state of emergency prior to that date. And then it also adds another paragraph that would recommend that the county executive rescind the executive order that he issued last Friday, the 15th, Friday the 15th, and issue a new order that is more consistent with the governor's lessening of restrictions on businesses and house of worship, including that retail stores could open up at 50% of capacity, that pet groomers and car washes and galleries, bookstores, etc., could open up with 50% capacity or by appointment only, and that churches and houses of worship may begin to hold religious services up to 50% capacity with outdoor encouraged. So that is the amendment that I believe Mr. Patch authorized to prepare and is being offered. And
Is there a motion to move the amendment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
second,
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Catch,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
aye.
Mrs. Bevins,
No.
Mr. Quirk,
No.
Mr. Patoka,
Nay.
Mr. Jones,
Nay.
Mr. Crandall.
No.
The amendment fails. Mr. Secretary, can you please call the roll on Resolution 52-20?
There's one other amendment,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair.
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry
where's the
about that.
last amendment? Okay.
And it goes to what Mr. Marks was discussing a little while ago. This is an amendment offered by Mr. Marks that would, again, in the time period for this continuation of the state of emergency, which the current resolution would allow for 45 days from May 25th, 2020. Mr. Marks' amendment would strike the 45 days and substitute 14 days rather. And so his amendment would allow the continuation from May the 25th until June the 8th, 2020. And I believe that is what Mr. Marks is offering. He may wish to speak to that.
I've made my point with the previous dialogue.
Okay. Is there a motion to move?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the second amendment to Resolution 52-20.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Mr. Catch,
Aye.
Mr. Patoka,
Nay.
Mr. Jones,
Nay.
Mrs. Bevins,
Nay.
Mr. Crandall,
No.
Mr. Quirk.
No.
The second amendment to 52-20 fails. Mr. Secretary, now would you call the roll on 52-20 with no amendments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Is there a motion to approve the amendment? I'm sorry, the resolution as is?
I'll move it.
Second.
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Hatch,
Aye.
Mr. Marks,
Aye.
Mr. Crandall,
No.
Mr. Quirk,
Yes.
Mr. Patoka.
Aye.
Resolution 52-20 has passed. Mr. Secretary, next item.
Next is Resolution 51-20. This is a resolution sponsored by Councilman Crandall, and this resolution would disapprove of the continuation of the state of emergency.
Mr. Crandall, do you have comments?
I think my comments have been covered. I knew that by putting the resolution in that it was potentially duplicative to the resolution that we've just spent almost 2 hours on. So I will move the resolution, although I think it's pretty evident what the vote is going to be. So I move the resolution.
Is there a second? No second. Resolution 51-20 is dead, I suppose. Dead? The word?
It fails for lack of a second, Madam Chair.
It failed.
We'll
Mr. Secretary?
rise from the grave.
Okay. I'm sure, Mr. Crandall. Mr. Secretary, please. Okay. Mr. Secretary, is there any further business to come before the council?
There is no further business, Madam Chair.
Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the council.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your grandson's graduation.
Thank you. I'm headed there now. Thank you.
Be safe.